moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
I watched both these movies Friday night.
Really? That
Yes,
was
I did.
like
Back
an
to
Iron
back.
Man marathon without falling asleep at all?
I didn't fall asleep, and thankfully Trish had already fallen asleep when Sentinel came on. because that was- Skylar and I are like, what the hell are we watching?
Yeah, once it started,
doozy.
once the ending kicked in, I was like, now I remember this, and maybe this wasn't a good idea for Jeff to watch. This
Yeah,
is
but-
like you can't unsee
Well, I thought
it.
it was a great pairing, though, when you consider the people that are involved in both of these movies. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. That's on the back end of the show. Are we in now? We're in. So welcome everybody.
Hi. This is our we're well into it's almost over. I'm talking about the month of October. I think that we're going to continue to cover some scary
Well,
type
according
movies,
to
but-
our numbers, if it's accurate, we're just going to be all horror all the time now. Is that what we should do?
Yeah, we've had a modest bump in listeners.
Okay. Well, okay. Listen,
yeah.
I'll take a bump over a pothole any day.
Yeah, so would I.
Yes. So yeah. Anyways, well, I'm glad that people are enjoying it.
Yeah. There's a lot of horror fans out there.
Yeah. Well,
And hopefully our picks are kind of up their alley. And so far they seem to have been. You
Listen, if they-
can't do wrong with things like Candyman or Phantasm. And, today's feature film is also beloved by many.
if you beloved the Sentinel, you're a sick bastard.
Now, both offerings today that we're going to talk about, and my wife wanted me to let our listeners know that these were her picks. So this is dedicated to my wife, Erin. These two movies that we're going to talk about.
Very nice. Two
Now,
nice
talking
picks.
about people that love the Sentinel, I think this struck some kind of a chord with her as a younger girl, because she had an older sister that kind of was her gateway to these types of things. And she gave me a story about her sister having the novel of the Sentinel and how she vividly remembers the cover. And we were going through some of the bonus features on the Scream Factory reissue, and they had a lot of the merchandising materials, and that cover came up. And
There
she's
it
like, "Oh,
is.
there it is.
The trauma.
This
The
is
trauma
what started
kicked
the
in.
whole thing." And then
That's all it
she died
takes,
for the movie.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all it takes is a trailer or a movie poster or just something
Yeah.
that sticks with you
Mhm.
as a kid. It's amazing. Yeah, I think this definitely, if I saw this as a kid, I'd still be in therapy.
Yeah. Well, apparently this, like a lot of the movies from the 70s, this did make the rounds quite a bit on cable TV, not so much HBO, but like network TV,
They
syndicated
must have cut the
TV.
heck out of it, though.
They must, yeah. And it's kind of like a Blade Runner deal where they added a narration to the TV version. I think they cut so much they
to
need
fill in the blanks. They had
to fill in the blanks.
And then Nancy walked around the corner and
Yeah.
suddenly it's like a
some-
radio drama. They're just
Yeah.
telling you what happened.
like Tourist Trap. There's stuff you can't unsee from this.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So do we have
Okay.
any news?
We
going
have
up
very
front?
little news, but we do have some news. First of all, I know neither one of you are really on Facebook, but social media, my feed has absolutely exploded the last couple of days, and people are all up in arms, losing their minds because It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, has been pulled from cable TV. After 54 years, you can no longer watch this on CBS. And there's all kinds of reports that it's people complained, it's full of misogyny. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. So I did some research, and apparently Apple Plus has made some deal, and they now own exclusive rights to stream all of the Peanuts properties.
So it's not
including the
that-
Christmas special, including the Halloween special.
So it's not like there's a huge outcry against Charlie Brown.
No, but you would think that there was because of all these damn misleading, once again, fake news headlines, and people don't read past the headline, and then all of a sudden they're sharing it, and people are losing their minds, and this is ridiculous, this is PC going crazy, and I'm like, that's not the case. So I gave up on trying to fight with people, my friends, well, my family most of all, who were sharing this thing and just going to town that this is the worst thing ever. And I'm like, well, if you read the article, Apple actually, most people do have smart TVs now, and you do have access to Apple TV, and it is screening for free, I think the 30th, the 31st, and November 1st.
Oh,
So
okay.
the next coming weekend. You don't need to pay for Apple Plus in order to have access to watch it. But of course, that's not good enough for people because after, like I said, it's a tradition, 54 plus years. Just like watching Rudolph. I probably would lose my mind if the CBS pulled Rudolph, because that is one show I have to go out of my way to DVR during the week just to remember that it's on. And I could own it. I mean, they're all out there on disc.
Yeah,
Right.
I own them all. I haven't watched them on network TV for years. Like, why would I choose to watch something that had commercials?
It's because it does. I guess it does kind of feed into the nostalgia of as a kid. Jim and I talked extensively about the days when you only had 3 channels, and if you missed that Frosty or you missed that Rudolph, you're not watching it again until the next year. And it was a water cooler. It doesn't matter that you saw it 100 times. Friggin' The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It's going in the next day to school. Did you watch The Grinch? So I guess in that regard, there are a bunch of old school people who don't own it on disc and don't know enough about streaming or other options.
Well, I think probably Apple made that deal because they have the new Snoopy show coming out in February.
Well, yes, they have a whole bunch of new stuff coming out.
And my son and I are really, really excited about the Snoopy show.
Is that Snoopy in Space?
It's called the Snoopy Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read something about Snoopy in Space. I didn't know if that was a standalone movie, but they do have more stuff coming out. So listen, I really liked the Blue Sky Peanuts movie that came out a couple years ago. I thought that was very well done. And it really was an homage to those old school, they stayed true, even though it was CG, they stayed true to his look and feel.
I think the great thing about that is it kind of brought you through an entire school year of the Peanuts characters, and it touched on a lot of the elements from those holiday specials.
Yeah.
All in one movie.
Yep.
Now, Christina, the show, have you heard any details about it? Is it going to be like a situational type thing with the whole Peanuts gang, or is it a focus on Snoopy?
It looks, all the characters are in it because we watched the preview. There's a preview for it now on Apple TV Plus. All the characters are in it, but it does seem the focus is more on Snoopy. But the bits that we saw on the preview made us laugh, so I think it looks really good.
Now, is it hand-drawn animation or is it CG?
It looks hand-drawn.
Okay.
Yeah. It has the appearance of the old
school stuff.
About 2-3 years, they ran a Saturday morning cartoon on CBS. I think it was called the Charlie Brown and Snoopy Show. That exists out there on disc, all 3 seasons, I believe. So they've tried it before, but that wasn't as successful as the holiday specials were.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
it does sound like they're going to start doing a lot more holiday specials as well. They're going to, it's going to be Snoopy's Groundhog Day or something. You name it, they'll probably have a special for it. But so yes, it is out there, folks. You can find it. You can see it. It has not been pulled. Let's see. This actually feeds into one of our features, which is Tim Burton is attached to a live action Addams Family TV remake. And I know, we've had 2 different live versions over the years. The animated show movie just came out last year. Yeah. And then of course you had 2 or 3 live action movies, which came out in the late 90s. All well done.
I'm always willing to give something a chance, but my heart breaks at the thought that Raul Julia would play. I know. Gomez again.
But until you saw those movies, though, like you couldn't imagine anyone else playing those characters from the
TV show.
50s TV show.
Yeah.
So.
But I thought Raul Julia and Angelica Houston are so perfect.
Killed it. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole cast, because Christina Ricci is great.
Yep.
And they're just all.
Carol Strickland, yeah.
How many of those did they make? Was it
I
two?
think there's Adam's
two.
Family Values. There's just
Yeah.
the two. From what I understand, this is going to be kind of set in current time, with Wednesday being the focal point of Wednesday, kind of seeing the weirdness of her family versus what's going on in the real world.
So it's a young adult angst movie.
I don't know. I hope not.
Like a
I hope
fish
it's
out of water.
I
type
hope it's a
movie?
little more tongue in cheek, like the Brady Bunch movie, where they at least, well, even like the Munsters, like Marilyn Munster was the regular one, and yet the whole family perceived her as being the freak.
Yeah, but Wednesday is one of them. So
right.
I really
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like
So
that.
I think
idea
that
of
she'll see
her-
the world, through her eyes, she'll see the world as being, kind of screwed up, which it is, where her family is the normal one. When you're filming in black and white in that old show, and if you've ever seen behind the scenes stills, like that house is painted pink. The walls are bright pink, which completely goes against the nature of the show, but in black and white, it works because you need those hues and those contrasts. What I didn't mention is it looks like it may very well end up on Netflix, the series. So we'll see. I don't know. And the only other news item I have is we just want to send out some well wishes to the governor, because unbeknownst to everybody, Arnold Schwarzenegger just came out from his second heart surgery in secret.
Yes, I
But,
saw this.
73.
Had a valve replaced, I think, was the nature of this.
He said he'll be back. Yeah, 73 years old. But
Yeah, I read something about this where his son tweeted, "Please don't work out today." After
and that's pretty much it. That is all the news I have for this week. Let's get into it then.
First up is 1999's Sleepy Hollow. I had no trepidations. I remember going into this. I couldn't wait to see.
I couldn't wait. I remember. Yeah.
And it didn't disappoint. This is one of the more beloved Tim Burton movies. Some would say it's his best. That's arguable, but it is up there. It definitely shows Tim Burton at the peak of his powers and what he is capable of telling a story. Of course, the movie has like a Law and Order 1799 vibe to it, because there's a crime to be solved.
Well, 99, yeah, you're right in the heart of the X-Files, so everyone's kind of emulating that to a certain degree. I forgot how much fun this was.
We were coming up on the millennium, and there's a little comment about the turn of the century in the movie.
Yes, because this takes place, 1799, yeah.
Sleepy Hollow is the story of Ichabod Crane, who was a constable. He's not a school teacher in the film version. And he is sent by the great Christopher Lee in the film's opening scenes from New York City, upstate, 2 days journey by horse and buggy. And I guess he's taking the Metro North horse and buggy railway line.
I think he took the long way around because the river was on his right-hand side, which meant that he somehow crossed the river from Manhattan and went up into Jersey to get to Sleepy Hollow, which is back over on the
But
East
still,
Coast.
it's a lovely image.
It is one of the more memorable opening scenes.
It looks like a Hudson River school painting.
Yeah,
which I think was
very much so.
intentional.
Even the opening credits, there's some really nice imagery going on there, and I will bring up later. There is a tree. Most of the stuff was filmed in England, but I guess there was some pickup shots in New York, and there is a tree in particular, which I am pretty confident sits in Bedford, New York, and it's a very historical tree. It's monstrous, and there's a plaque there that indicates that it has been around long before the Civil War, that it is quite old. It sits right on the side of Route 22. Very, very famous tree.
So the reason that Ichabod is going upstate is to investigate murders. As he puts it a little bit later, the victims have been decapitated.
But you got the feeling they were just trying to get him out of the way. Like they just sent him on a wild goose chase just to get him out of the town.
Because he wants to cut up bodies, right? He's
right, and he goes, "What are we, heathens?" And then they bring in this other guy, say, throw him in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I like about this, though, is that before you even get to Ichabod, there's like a little opening, almost prologue. The actual like incident that is central to the plot, but you don't know it yet because you haven't seen the movie, is sort of revealed. There's some papers being signed, and there's some people holding hands, and then suddenly there's a guy in a carriage riding through a field holding a document.
Martin Landau.
And uncredited, by the way, Martin Landau. riding along and he hears something weird outside the carriage and he looks out and the driver has been decapitated. I love this little opening scene because it sets the tone for the whole film.
Yeah.
And again, like something you only know on repeated viewings, there's actually everything that's sort of essential to the plot is revealed in like that first 2 minutes. You just don't have the context for it yet.
Right, correct.
When Ichabod arrives in Sleepy Hollow, such a picturesque, especially when he's walking down the hill and you see the entire town laid out before you. Tim Burton was commenting that he had made that town as a miniature model. He wanted the set builders to base the town on his model, and he said it was almost exact when he saw it. When he was coming down the hill himself, it was like he was looking down at his miniature model.
How grateful is that got to be? I mean, that's satisfying as a creator like that. That's one thing when you have a vision and then you leave it to someone else's hands, and then you can come on set and you're like, "This is not what I wanted at all."
Right.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it was. The town itself is a nice little character.
One of the things I'm really partial to in this movie is the light. Is a lot of times there's some very extreme light on faces, especially in the early scenes, like when they're in New York, or any scene where they're in shadow, like it almost makes the bodies disappear. So like the faces are illuminated, and there's just beautiful light throughout the film, like a real sort of masterful use of grays, because normally when there's shadow, it's not considered quote good light, but they use it really effectively.
Yeah, I thought the cinematography, and now I watched a DVD. I owned a DVD. I don't know how it looks remastered on Blu-ray, if it was remastered on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I was going to bring this up because I had it on DVD and I bought the Blu-ray for this viewing. It didn't seem, it was kind of like watching an older DVD version of American Werewolf in London, where the grain was still there. And I don't know if that's deliberate.
Well, I do know they shot with blue filters because it's got a very cool cast to it, to the point where, like, anytime you saw blood on set, that blood is like neon orange, because they're shooting with these blue filters so that it actually looked blood red, once you see it on screen. And you're right. There's times when it's completely devoid of color, except for, like, say, a pumpkin, which is just, vibrant. And even, you go back to that Martin Landau scene, and he's running through the cornfield and he encounters that scarecrow with the pumpkin. It's Jack Skellington. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's the same, in the opening sequence of Nightmare Before Christmas. And there's a couple scenes that I guess I don't remember exactly, and I didn't go back and watch, but like when he falls on the horse backwards, right?
Yeah.
That's straight out of the cartoon.
Right.
It is.
But he doesn't, in the cartoon, he doesn't fall on the horseman's horse. He falls on his own horse backwards.
That's right. But he's facing backwards, right?
Yes.
And of course the covered bridge scene is almost.
It is a little bit of a reenactment. It's obviously a little homage to the short film.
Yeah.
We watch this every year for Halloween, on Halloween, and we watch the cartoon every year. I've watched the cartoon every year with my father since I was a kid.
Oh, cool. See, traditions. There we go.
So, I know both of them really well, and obviously I've reread the story a few times, and I just wrote a book that's based on Sleepy Hollow.
Oh yes, jeez. How come we didn't bring that up yet?
Well, it's not out yet. So.
No, but it's a teaser.
It's a teaser of things to come. Yes.
The Horseman? Is that what?
It's called Horseman. Yeah, just Horseman.
Horseman.
Yeah.
No, the.
A Tale of Sleepy Hollow, because they got nervous about just having it say Horseman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, it's always like about maximizing search engine things, or whatever.
Did they make you put a hashtag in there as well?
No.
Hashtag Horseman.
Hashtag Horseman.
Yes, indeed.
So I love this movie a lot, and I do think one of the things I love about it is that it's amazingly well paced, and I think that this is so significant because movies now, to me, almost every movie I see is too long. Like, why is this 2 hours and 20 minutes? Why is this 2.5 hours? Like, they could have cut this. The great thing about this movie is it has all these really nice, quiet moments, what you might think of as investigative moments, right? When Crane is checking things out and talking to people and going around and following clues. And then it has some really nice action set pieces, but nothing goes on too long. Everything feels like it's sort of well paced and well punctuated. It's only an hour and 40 minutes, but they get a ton done in this
It
time
actually it
period.
feels a lot less than an hour and 40
Yeah,
minutes.
you're right.
Mhm.
Now that you think about it, it really does go along at a nice clip.
Because
Mhm.
even those scenes that Christina is mentioning, in between the action sequences, Ichabod is investigating and the story is unfolding. He himself, Johnny Depp, Ichabod, carries you through those. It's
Mhm.
almost like I love those scenes more than the
Yeah,
action. scenes.
no, I think that he absolutely kills it. I love the fact that he decides to play this guy as like very nebbish and squeamish. I mean, you could turn him fainting into a drinking game every time he faint. Well, and then Katrina too. I think she faints twice. So you could be very drunk by the end
I
of
remember
this.
the experience of sitting in the theater and watching this, and the audience was just loved him from the moment.
Yeah.
Do you know that
See him.
he hates his performance in this? He refuses to watch this movie.
Really?
Yeah, and I
That's
don't know
terrible.
if that's probably because before his pirate days when he really went all in with these characters and he's committed to, he wanted to ugly himself up. He actually, because in the book, Ichabod Crane is not a handsome man by any means, gangly, and he wanted to kind of ugly himself down, and I think rightfully so that Burton and the producers were just like, no, just play it the way you are. So I don't know. Maybe he just feels that he wasn't enough of a character, that he was maybe too Johnny Depp. Who knows? But I love him in this. I thought he was great. And you're right. He carries this whole movie. So.
And the cast is basically a collection of Tim Burton's favorite people.
Yeah. I mean, Jeffrey
Big-
Jones. You got
Right. Jeffrey
Yeah.
Jones,
you got
Michael
Christopher
Goff.
Lee. Yeah.
And then you had the presence of Lisa Marie at that time, who was
Right.
also in every single one of his movies.
Right. Christopher Walken had been in Batman Returns. There's like a lot of people that he had worked with before. And then you have the triple Star Wars connection.
Yeah. All the Sith Lords. Well, you got to imagine
Yes.
this came out the same year as Phantom Menace.
Mhm.
So Ray Park was on a roll. No
Yeah.
pun intended, leveling heads. But yeah, he had a three-way fight in both these movies.
Mhm.
And then he was an X-Men the next year. You
That's
couldn't get
true,
away
that's
from Ray
true.
Park.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ray Park, who plays the Horseman,
The Horseman.
without his head,
Yeah.
and Ian McDiarmid, of course, Emperor
Yep.
Palpatine,
Emperor.
Top.
Yeah.
and Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee.
Mhm.
Who was Dooku, Count Dooku.
And it just made me reflect watching this on Christopher Lee. Like, I am so glad that he had a sort of a renaissance during this time period, the late 90s, early 2000s. As we said, he loomed large in the prequels. One of the best things about the prequels was Christopher Lee. In this, very briefly, but very memorably in Sleepy Hollow. And then, of course, the Lord of the Rings trilogy as
Yes,
well.
even more
And
so. Yeah, you're
It
right.
was all because all of the directors had been fans of him in
The whole
Hammer
thing.
horror
The
films.
Hammer horror.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now that they finally had the clout to make big movies and get him in them, but it was because people loved, these were people who loved his early career. So it is nice, and it's nice because it's sort of the start of a little relationship with Tim Burton, because he ended up going on doing like 4 more films
Yeah.
with Tim Burton, like always in small roles, but
Right.
it's always nice to see him
Yes.
and hear that voice.
Yeah. Speaking of his voice, there's a bonus feature on the Nightmare Before Christmas disc where he reads the original poem that Tim Burton
Oh, wow.
wrote. And it's so, once you hear him read that, you can't unhear that. When you
Nice.
read that poem, you hear Christopher Lee's voice.
I was surprised to see American Zoetrope name pop up in the opening credit. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah,
That's Francis Ford Coppola, right?
hmm
So
Yeah, and he's listed as an executive producer.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny is that Tim Burton didn't realize that they were producing until he saw that credit himself.
Mhm.
Oh,
That's how
really? He
little
was just
involvement.
as shocked I was. He was
That's
like,
how
"Wait a
little
minute."
involvement they had with the filmmaking.
Which is nice.
That's
because,
good, right?
it's like you
Hands
can
off.
really, really feel like he had a chance to make the movie that he wanted to make,
Yeah.
without anybody really interfering in it.
Yep.
one of the things I like about this movie too is there's a lot of, you can tell a lot of love went into this. There's a lot of really little sort of lovely effects, like the mist dousing the torches when Mazbeth is in the watchtower,
Yep.
or like the strobing light in the woods when the horseman is riding.
Yeah.
I love that overall effect, like the strobing, and then like the leaves always flying up in like this beautiful curved arc, you know, around the horseman. The demon faces that come out of the fire in the midwife's cabin. One detail I really like is that whenever someone touches the horseman, bumps up against him, or like memorably during the scene when Brahm and Ichabod are fighting him, there's like grave dust coming off of him. Oh, it's just a little detail, but it's
little
sort of
detail
nice.
like that, yeah.
It's nice, you know, like it's acknowledged, right, that he came from the grave.
Yeah.
So there's always like this little puff of dust coming off of his body when they hit him. There's a lot of things in this to like.
And I like the more so in the beginning when they're building up the arrival of the horseman. The very air seems to leave the scene before he just comes barreling through. Yeah. Especially, I'm thinking of the part when Mazbeth is keeping watch, and the deer come running out of the woods, and then the flames extinguish, and boom, he just flies out of the woods after it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really nice. Now, I said I watch this every year. Sometimes I've watched it at least once a year for the last 20 years, sometimes more. So, but I remember the first time I saw it, there's a lot of nice scenes of tension, especially the scene when they're in the woods and they find the witch in the cave. I think that scene's like the tension sort of builds nicely, but also with some comedy, which is played really well, because when Ichabod is going in, he's hiding behind young Mazbeth.
Yes, yes. He actually pushes him forward.
You first.
Which happens at the end, because you're thinking, because in most films, you see a growth in the lead character. That does not happen.
No,
it
At the
does.
very end, he pushes he pushes Katrina in front of him when the horseman approaches.
But yeah, he's acted heroically like throughout the whole scene prior, like where he fights the horseman, and you know, he has the kids take the reins, right, so he can like battle the horseman and get the horseman away and all this stuff. So I think that it's more that if he's really thinking about the danger, then he's
because even in when they're on the carriage, is specifically I'm thinking about it's still very foppish, kind of like falling into heroic things rather than being on the offensive.
But he's trying, is the point.
He is.
Is that he's trying. He's not like letting the kids fight off the horseman, you know.
But he still, and he also still faints at the end.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And we drink.
And he does, you know, run in front. He's about to run, you know, in front of the bullet when she turns at the end, he gets hit with the bullet, and she looks like she's going to shoot Katrina. She turns it on Ichabod instead. But he's about to move anyway to block the bullet. So I think that he can be brave if he's not really thinking about it. But I think that if he sort of contemplates what he's scared of, like the scene when the spider's in the room.
Oh yeah, that's a great scene.
It's like, oh, there's something under the bed. Come see. I mustn't. When he sees the horseman for the first time, and then he survives the encounter, and he's in bed, he's holding the covers up to his head.
Yeah.
It's real. I saw it. It's real. It's like, that's what we've been trying to tell you for the first half of the movie.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he's the man of science. He's there to prove it otherwise.
So in a nutshell, he goes to the town of Sleepy Hollow, and he meets the town elders, who are all more or less trying to hide something. It's obvious that they are complicit in something going on here. And it turns out, as a great whodunit, you've got multiple suspects. Yeah. And it is a surprise, you know, always when I watch these movies, I should have seen that coming, I think. Right. And it's obvious in retrospect, you know, who they're building up. But you don't, if this is the first time you're watching it, and again, spoiler alert, Ichabod figures out that somebody is controlling the horseman, because the horseman is killing specific people.
Specifically people, yeah.
And then, you know, as his investigation furthers, it's all centered around a will. But now this is where I was getting a little bit confused with my notes, because there's so many Vans in their last name.
Van Garrett,
Van Tassel, Van Diem. Van Brunt, you know.
Oh,
A lot of Vans. The will of Van Tassel, the Baltus Van Tassel, was now everything was going to be left to his second wife, Lady Van Tassel. Now, am I getting this right, or am
No.
I?
No.
That's why she's
I
killing.
was gonna say,
everybody.
wait a minute, that doesn't quite.
Inherit everything.
It was a little convoluted, but I don't think that was.
So the key here is the family tree in the Bible. This is actually
Yes,
one of
right.
those other things that I like, is because at the very beginning of the movie,
You see the
Jeffrey Jones's character, the Reverend, says the only book you'll need is this one, and
Bible.
hands him the Bible. And of course, he means it in a spiritual sense.
Yeah.
But it turns out that this is the key to unlocking the mystery because of the family tree. So the
It's like
Van
Paranorman, he didn't know
Garretts,
just to read the book.
who are the biggest landowners in the area, who are extremely wealthy, are related to the Van Tassels.
Yep.
And of course, because of these murders, the Van Garretts, father and son, are both murdered. We find out that the widow Winship had married into the family. She's also murdered. So there's no Van Garretts left to inherit. So because of this,
Except for
Baltus
Katrina.
Van Tassel will inherit all of the Van Garrett property. Baltus's will leaves his property to his daughter,
Yep.
Katrina, to his wife in the event of Katrina's death.
By that standard, I am
Mhm.
barking up the right tree. Lady Van Tassel,
So
all of her
roundabout.
manipulation is so that she is the heir in this will. Now, and she has to remove, and that's why they're the first victims. The Van Garretts, the father and son, and the widow Winship. A great use of alliteration, by the way. I love hearing that uttered, that name, because she is with child.
And, of course, the second Lady Van Tassel assumed that she would inherit her husband's property until he died, and she found out that Katrina actually inherited.
Right. Let's talk about that church scene, though. That's so well staged and so well put together. And here they are. They're like, "Oh, we're safe. We're safe. We're inside.
Right.
We're all inside the church. You can't get in."
It's a great scene because it brings the horsemen out, and the whole town is there. So it's an epic action scene. He can't go into the church. He's stuck outside the fence, but he's there to get Baltus, and he finds a way. He does get him in the end.
And in the meantime, like, the Reverend and the doctor are in various stages of confession, because the doctor's ready to reveal everything. The
Right, they all think
still
he's
trying
there
to
for
cover
them, yeah.
up
Yep.
the conspiracy. And so then there's a fight, and the Reverend kills the doctor, Baltus kills the Reverend, and then the horseman gets his prey.
In front of a very shocked townspeople. Yeah.
And his daughter, who sees her father impaled.
Yeah, and dragged through the streets. And beheaded. I will say, I think that the props department must have had a field day with all these severed heads. Right? I wonder if anybody got to keep their severed head, bring it home with them.
Burton was saying that very few people that had their own head casted wanted to be on set when the head was there, because it freaked them out because they were so lifelike.
That's pretty funny.
So one thing I wanted to mention is, Tim Burton is obsessed with making dark-eyed women very pale and blonde, and he does this to Winona Ryder too, and
to ill effect.
And I don't think Christina Ricci looks great like with this either, because it's you know what it is, it's that he always has them dye their eyebrows too, so the eyebrows are so pale and their eyes are so dark. Actually, in Sweeney Todd too, the actress who plays Joanna in Sweeney Todd has the same kind of look. And I always sort of feel like maybe he had some fantasy when he was a teenager about like some tubercular girl named Lucretia, and
he's just living it out.
She was very pale, and she had dark eyes.
Tim, chill.
Because if you
this is therapy.
Look at the girls in his films, like you see this recurring over and over.
Yeah, you're right though.
Actually, Emia Wasikowska too, and Alice in Wonderland. She's a blonde, but she has darker eyes, and she is not as blonde as she is in that movie. And again, like he gives her a very pale face.
No wonder why I've never been cast in any of his movies.
But Lisa Marie is allowed to have darker hair, as she is kind of a darker character. So it's kind of explained that Ichabod himself has a connection to magic and the supernatural through his mother, who, for one reason or other, was married to a very puritanic reverend who, once he found out that she was giving little lessons of magic to Ichabod, very innocent things apparently, but
Enough to
yes,
do her in.
put her in the Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Excellent.
And now Ichabod has these holes in his hands, like little scars on his hands, and look like little puncture marks in his hands,
Yep.
so, which he looks at from time to time. And he says that he doesn't remember getting them. And then through flashbacks and dreams, you realize that this weird room that his father had in the back of the church with all these different contraptions, and that he put his hands on one particular chair that made the puncture wounds.
50 Shades of Crane.
None of this detracts from what's going on. It just builds the
No, I was gonna say it just kind of adds to the weirdness of it all.
yeah, mhm.
You know,
that Ichabod has his own connection is just a great touch to the supernatural goings on. And now the big reveal is that it is Lady Van Tassel that is the one who's controlling the horsemen. And I'm saying it's a reveal because you think that she's been killed by the horsemen right before Baltus is taken, because Baltus sees the horseman approaching her. But of course, she set that all in motion so he could view that. And she knew, of course, that he would run away before the horseman actually took her. So he would assume that she was gone. So when he tells the townsfolk that, he's telling the audience as well that she's gone. She's no longer a suspect. And so that's why it's a surprise for us when you see her come back a little bit later.
Surprise.
Miranda Richardson, great, because she's very subdued. You know, she's in the background most of the time until the end, when she finally comes out, and then it makes sense why she is the perfect suspect, and hence the actual perpetrator of this, the holder of the head. And I love the scene because it's given away early on what happens to the horseman himself, the Hessian, the mercenary, who comes from Germany to create havoc during the Revolutionary War. He's kind of like, a mercenary for hire that's been brought there by the British to just cause havoc.
Just cause havoc, yeah.
And then he's finally taken down by a group of American soldiers, and he takes quite a few of them out, but he's outnumbered and he's killed. And a grave is dug, and the reason that he's caught is because these two little girls, you don't know who they are when you first
rat
see
them out, man.
He even says when he sees them, he happens upon, it's in the dead of winter, and these two girls, no coats on, just two
collecting
firewood.
Yeah.
And he says, shh, and it's very hard for him to say shh because he's got all those sharp.
And that's his only line of dialogue between shh and yeah. That's it. He got nothing else.
So one of them snaps the twig, so the
draws their attention.
Hear them. You think it's just a throwaway scene, like a nice visual. These two girls, it brings back thoughts of The Shining of the two girls in the hallway, right?
Yeah.
But no, they're the witch, and it turns out to be Miranda Richardson as two young girls. So she knows from the get-go where the horseman is buried, and she has access to the head, so she can control the horseman. And so she almost does it. She's wrapping things up in a nice little bow. She even kills her own sister.
Does she play both roles?
I think so.
Right? Yeah. I feel like there should have been more witch.
I like to call her Large Marge.
Large Marge.
I love that. I really love that scene when they go into her cave, into the witch's cave, and he says, "I should like to say that I make no assumptions about your occupation."
Yeah. And then he says the word witch.
Yeah.
This is sort of like what I was saying with Alive a few weeks ago, where this movie doesn't put down anything that it doesn't pick up again. There's nothing extraneous, and I think that's one of the reasons why it works really well.
Yeah.
Now we need to talk about Casper Van Diem.
Yeah, he plays Brom.
Brom. Apparently he gained like 40 pounds for this role, but I like this character.
He's really aggressive in a way that I don't think of Brom being in the original story.
Well, I guess maybe, I don't know if they needed to have a secondary villain or someone that you didn't, I don't know, because he was very protective of Katrina.
But I
It was
think of
yeah.
Brom as being even in the cartoon, he's mischievous.
Right.
You know, I don't think of him as being sort of mean or a bully or like really aggressive. And I did like that, you know, he played the prank on Ichabod because
Right.
if you've read the original story, and I don't know if you have or if it's been a while
Been a
since you read it,
long time.
but it's very clear at the end of the story that it was Brom who
Yeah.
was the horseman. Because they, you know, in the story, Washington Irving says that whenever the subject of the pumpkin in particular was mentioned, that Brom would always laugh, you know. So I liked that they did that little bit, not just as an homage to the cartoon, but also an
A nod.
acknowledgement
Yeah.
to the original story, where it's very clear that Brom
That it was
played the
Brom.
headless horseman to chase Ichabod Crane out of town so that he could marry Katrina. But of course, in the original story, it turns out that that's unnecessary, because there's a scene where after the party, the famous party, Crane had stayed afterwards to speak to Katrina, and it's implied that he asked her to marry him and he went away sad. So she had already turned him down. So Brom didn't even need to chase him out of town. But then there wouldn't be a story.
There wouldn't be a story. You know, we need to talk about the tree scene, because
Yeah.
that is pretty iconic and pretty epic. Just the reveal of the horseman coming out of that tree. I remember sitting in the theater, and I know I know Jim had mentioned, you know, seeing this in the theater and being very excited for it. I actually saw, and I brought this up before, I saw this in the theater with my sister-in-law, whose father ran the stables for the Rockefellers in the Rockefeller Estates over here in Bedford Hills. She grew up in Tarrytown, and she is named Katrina after this character.
Cool.
So, you know, when they I think they changed her name in 97. North Tarrytown officially changed her name to Sleepy Hollow in 97. So that was a pretty big deal. And that was only 2 years before this movie came out. You know, we talk about Paranorman, where this whole town like rides on the coattails of the story, and that's exactly what Sleepy Hollow does here.
Speaking of that tree scene, it's just almost gleefully, although the character is not supposed to be this way, but I can tell Depp is having a great time chopping away at the tree and getting blood splattered on his face. And when the heads assemble, when he realizes the heads are in the base of this tree, it reminded me of the Ben Gardner scene.
Yes. Yeah.
The way the heads
just kind of like bloop.
And there's a little like a chorus of voices that you hear as the heads appear, just a little bit of like, oh, kind of thing. And then,
right.
Yeah.
So does this make his horse dead too, right? It would have to.
Yeah,
be.
It must, right?
Right?
It must.
Yes.
So, and then, of course, at the end, in the climax, once Ichabod gets his hands on the skull of the horseman, he takes him out of Miranda Richardson's control by returning the head to the horseman. And then you get that great scene where the head goes back on the shoulders. And it becomes Christopher Walken. You see all the ligaments and musculature.
Right, that is an almost large Marge moment.
It is, because the horseman ducks down below camera. Suddenly he pops up again and his eyes are all, that was as you said, another large Marge moment. And then he becomes Christopher Walken. And the great scene where he takes Lady Van Tassel into the tree with him, but not before he kisses her with his sharp teeth. And it is doesn't look like a pleasant experience for Lady Van Tassel.
No.
Now, unbelievably, according to Tim Burton, this was Christopher Walken's first screen kiss ever.
I can believe that. I don't think he looked very kissable.
And then Tim Burton joking it was probably his last. So,
well, put that on your tape. Yeah, I'm not going to kiss that guy. Although I did have some issues because the skull teeth didn't quite match up to his teeth, his prosthetic teeth, when he was in full form. But that's neither here nor there.
Right. Were they sharpened at least, though?
They were, but not to the degree that it looks like when he has his, when his mouth is open and whatnot. But we need to talk about Danny Elfman's score, which, I mean, I love Danny Elfman to no end. I think the man can do no wrong except for Planet of the Apes. And this is up there. This is up there as one of his top scores.
This is my favorite of his scores. That's not Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
Right.
Well,
there's an asterisk with that statement.
Yeah.
I was going to say that one stands on its own.
But I love this score. I think it's beautiful. It's atmospheric. I actually love to listen to this when I'm writing. I listen to this a lot.
I might have to search it out because it really was. Again, I said at the beginning of the show, you forget how much fun this movie really is.
Well, I
You
don't because
know?
I watch it every
No, I
year.
know, but I don't get to watch as many movies as often as I want to. But sitting down and watching this, and the whole family sat down and watched it the other night, and you just absolutely love it. I mean, Johnny Depp can do no wrong.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And again, I talked a little bit about all those character actors who've been in other Burton films. They all have such nice little moments in this film that are really memorable. I love the scene with Michael Goff in the in the notary's office when they find him hiding in the cabinet. And
Now, I'd like to talk about him for a
Yeah.
second. That I'm a notary. I would love to have that as a profession, just to have people come to me. So I can notarize documents that I know nothing about. Okay, do you say that this is true? Yes, boom. And then you get a
Don't you have to read them?
No, you don't have to read them. All you have to do is have
I just
that
pay you your
person
14
attest.
cents or whatever it takes.
You have that person attest that what they are signing to is true. You don't have to read them.
So the job of notary was different in the colonial period. I actually did some research for this because I just
Really?
wrote a book that was set in Sleepy Hollow. And so
I'm
the
going to drink every
notary,
time you mention your book.
the notary was a person who was usually like the most trusted person in town because they kept all of the papers and filings, especially related to property. So I think you would think them more the way we would think of a modern lawyer or lawyer's clerk who
I
kept,
see. Yes.
kept all of the documents. So it wasn't just a person who witnessed the signing of things. Like they were actually responsible for the documents, all of the documents in town. And their job was of particular importance because there was so much potential for property dispute in a new country, right?
Sure.
Yeah, the notary was actually a really, really vital part of the system, especially in the colonial period. But that's obviously changed over time as documents have become more legal. And now it's become like the province of lawyers, and notaries like yourself are just witnesses to the signing of documents.
Interesting. We didn't even talk about the windmill.
I know, Frankenstein's windmill.
It's such a, there's like 2 or 3 like key set pieces in this movie, and this windmill is so. I mean, I had to look it up because I'm like, all right, we just couldn't go through the whole movie without an explosion. But I guess that is a real thing, that grain dust can explode, it can spontaneously blow up. So I'm like, all right, well, at least he did his homework there. But yeah, that is such an homage to Frankenstein.
But I immediately thought of Army of Darkness when that windmill.
Of course you did.
Well, of course you did.
There's so many memorable lines in this. I have 4 pages of notes, and most of them are writing down lines from the movie.
Well, Watch Your Head was my favorite.
Watch Your Head is a good one.
Yeah, Watch Your Head. And I think that was actually ad-libbed as they're going into the windmill.
You know what? One of my favorite scenes. It's a dialogue between Katrina and Ichabod when he enters his room and she's there, and he says, "Katrina, why are you in my room?" "Because it is yours. Is that wicked of me?" And he should have been like, "Well, if you say it like that, it is kind of wicked of you."
Young Maspeth, please go step outside. Yes. Did her suit at the end of the movie remind you of Beetlejuice's suit?
Of course.
Right? That was that was a direct.
That's another Burton
nod.
thing. There's always got to be like some black and white stripes.
Yeah. That, and I think there was a headstone that came right out of Beetlejuice. But again, without seeing them side by side, you start taking down all these notes and you start seeing all this little carry through. I did read that Johnny Depp did pretty much all of his own stunts. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, outside of Tom Cruise, most people don't do that. And most production companies don't want your star to be dragged behind a horse. And I thought that was interesting. He also adopted the horse. He adopted his horse.
He adopted the horse? Oh.
Yeah, because they were going to put it down.
What?
They were going to put it down. And he's like, yeah, I don't think so. So yeah, apparently he adopted the horse. 18 decapitations in total. It's pretty gory.
So funny. Again, this is like last week where I'm like, this is like, compared to the way a lot of movies are now today, it's almost PG-13 violence.
Yeah, I thought that.
Yeah, it is cartoon. It is.
I think that the reason it got an R was because of the child under the floorboard.
We didn't even talk about that either. That's freaking dark.
I mean, they
I mean,
don't
I know it takes place
show
off
it.
screen.
Yeah.
No, but it is implied that
It
kid does
definitely
not
is.
survive.
He comes out
this
of the
encounter.
cabin and he's tightening up
putting the
bag.
something in the
that's-
bag. Yeah.
You listen, if you showed me a child being decapitated, I would have had some serious issues with it. I think that's over. But just the fact that, yeah, he walks.
I think
Um,
actually it has to do with what we were talking about last week with Candyman, how they're saying the MPA really doesn't like blood spurting. And there is quite a bit of
Yeah.
blood spurt.
Yeah,
in-
there's
Yeah.
quite a bit.
But
It's
it
almost
does
like a
border
ketchup bottle
on
being
cartoon again,
squeezed.
because the way it's filmed, because everything has that blue cast to it.
Mhm.
The blood takes on a very cartoony pallor. It's because it's so vivid and it's so bright. I don't know if that plays into it one way or the other, but yeah, I do have a question for Christina though, because you probably because you do your homework, and I don't know what the answer is.
I might not either.
Okay, but in a couple scenes, you know, you got Katrina looking out the window, or someone's looking out a window, and in the multiple panes of glass, there is one pane which has almost like this warped circle mark.
It's like a watermark. So like I remember doing research on this a while
Okay,
ago.
see,
So
I know
let
I
me
came to the right person.
if I can recall correctly, but it's like a mark from the maker.
Okay.
That I recall. I'm not 100% sure on this. I feel like I need to do a fact check.
Okay, but I noticed it once or twice, and
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way that's just a throwaway defect in the prop. I mean, you're building these sets from scratch, so
Yeah.
if he's gonna make them as authentic as possible, I didn't know if it acted like a telescope type of thing, if it magnified. If you look through it, it would somehow enlarge what you're looking at, or if it was just a natural defect back in the day when they made a flat.
This
pane
this
of
should
glass.
be. It's definitely I know that it's period appropriate.
Okay.
The
yeah,
way
I
that the
assumed as
glass
much.
looked.
Right.
But I'm not 100%. I remember looking this up a while ago, and now on short notice, I can't
Okay. No.
remember
Again,
offhand.
yeah.
But I definitely looked it up because I was curious about it for the same reason that you are, because I get curious about weird
Cool.
things like that.
Cool.
So.
And you know what was fun about this, which I just listened to Lore podcast, which you turned me on to, and he had this whole episode devoted to the whole history of Headless Horseman, long before the story ever kind of became the center point. I mean, that, you know, the lore goes all the way back to like Celtic and German medieval ages. That's a call out to Lore podcast. If anyone's ever listened to it or want to listen to it,
It's a good one.
they do some deep dives. He does some deep dives on stuff like this. So yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I had a great time watching this again.
Yeah,
I was so happy to be reacquainted with it.
Yep.
It's been a few years since I watched it.
I agree. Yeah.
Can you believe that they were eyeing other actors? Of course, Tim Burton wanted to work with Johnny Depp from the get-go. But it was recommended that maybe he look at Brad Pitt.
What?
He came up.
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. That's exactly how I think I said that out loud.
Well, I mean, Johnny Depp he's 17 years older than Christina Ricci. So
and we didn't mention this, but she was still a teenager when she made this.
She was, I think, 19. So she
was like almost coming right off Addams Family. She was what, 13 in that?
And
13.
he was 36. So,
Wow.
but he does look younger. So
right.
he
plays it younger. Yeah,
it doesn't feel quite as icky as it could
Liam
be.
Neeson would have
but-
been.
I think they would have had
creepy
to recast,
uncle.
They would have had to recast both parts if they did that. And lastly, the name of Daniel Day-Lewis came up.
Oh, well, Daniel Day-Lewis can do anything.
He can do anything. Yeah.
So,
But
like,
again,
It would have been a different movie.
Daniel
Brad
Day-Lewis.
Pitt may have been one who could have come closest to like kind of the goofiness of what Depp captured.
I would not like this movie at all if Brad Pitt was in it. Like,
see, I do like him.
See,
And
I think
not every
he is
movie.
shedding a tear right now.
Yeah, I'm sure, in his massive estate.
I realize that I'm like way in the minority, but I think I've only ever liked him in maybe 2 roles, and like he's the kind of actor who appeals to me so little that if he's in a movie, I won't watch it.
Wow.
So like I probably would have hated this movie if he was in it, but I think I mean Johnny Depp has now been in enough Tim Burton movies. Like Johnny Depp is basically Tim Burton's Avatar. He just knows.
But I feel like he needs to go back to this and not try and create these over-the-top characters every time he's on screen now.
Yeah, but he also, but that's crazy to say that he hasn't been doing it. What's Edward Scissorhands, if not an over-the-top character? You know what I mean? He's playing it a little more subtly, but it's still an over-the-top character. Like, it's an extreme character.
But I find it interesting that he hates his performance in this.
Because it's the one where his face is the most like his own face.
Probably that he's not. Yeah, I don't know.
But
whatever.
The best thing about him in any movie I think that he's in is that you're not looking at the screen and thinking it every time he's there. Oh, that's Johnny Depp. As you would be.
There are certain actors that, you know, Harrison Ford comes to mind. That's just Harrison Ford playing. Even the last Indiana Jones, it's just Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones. You're no longer that character. You're the actor. Interesting.
Great movie. It was released on my birthday in 1999. And I think I saw it opening night as a birthday gift. It was made on a $70 million budget and made $207 million. So a huge hit. Right. Deservedly so. And Burton, I think, kind of was discouraged going into this because his Superman movie with Nicolas Cage fell through.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this kind of built him back up again, working on Sleepy Hollow, because it just seemed to fit him like a glove.
Yeah, you got to return to what you do best.
So I just want to clarify, because I looked up very quickly. It is, in fact, a maker's mark called Crown Glass, and it is typically seen only in the UK. Didn't migrate as much to the U.S.
Interesting, since this takes place in the U.S.
And there was a specific technique that was used to get like a blob on the end of the pipe when they were making the glass, and then they would blow it until it formed a bubble, and then they would spin it until it formed a disc, and then you get these little markings on.
So it doesn't have any specific purpose. It's just
it's like a decorative mark.
Yeah, interesting. So buckets?
I give this 4.5.
Woo!
This is one of my favorite movies.
I went 4 and I thought that was high.
Yeah, I would match Christina. I think I'd give this 4.5. It's very, very good. Love it.
Cool. All right, there we go. Once again, we're all on board. Let's see what the next movie brings.
Let's see. Okay, let's go to the concession stand quickly, and then we'll come right back and talk about the Sentinel.
Everybody loves pizza. How would you like a hot, tempting pizza made fresh to your order right this minute? Well, all you have to do is come to the snack bar. Oh, baby, we got pizza, we got popcorn, we got Pepsi and Coke. We got ice cream, we got candy, and our food's no joke. We got hot dogs, we got burgers, we got fries that taste. So come to the snack bar, come and see your face. So during intermission, follow intuition, come to the snack bar.
All right, so we are back, and we are talking about The Sentinel, which is a 1977 horror film based on a novel. And who's the author's name? I've got 5 pages of notes. Jeffrey Convance. So he is not only the author of the book, but he's also a producer of the movie. So he worked with the director, and he had some insight into the casting process, apparently. So this movie is about a fashion model, and her name is Allison Parker, and she is in a relationship with a character played by Chris Sarandon, and his name is Michael Lerman, and he is a lawyer
himself.
Jack Skellington himself.
So here we go.
Now, I learned this watching the commentary. There's 3 commentaries on the Sentinel.
Oh, my.
So I would be fully informed for today's episode. I listened to all 3 commentaries.
Yikes.
One of which was the director, Michael Winner. The other being Allison herself, Christina Rains, the lead actress. and the producer and writer, Jeffrey Konvitz. What I was about to say was, I didn't realize Chris Sarandon was married to Susan Sarandon, hence her name.
You never knew that?
I never knew that, no.
I'm probably going to throw that out there as well.
There's
I
other
don't
people that
necessarily
have the
follow
same last names and are not related in any way, so didn't know that at all. But Chris Sarandon plays the character of Michael Lerman, who is a lawyer, and he is Christina Rain's boyfriend in this movie. And I guess they're having a little bit of a relationship issue at the beginning because Sarandon's character wants to get married to Allison's character, who's a fashion model, and she kind of needs some space when we meet her. And so she wants to get her own apartment, and he's trying to convince her to move in with him. So hence we are introduced to this old brownstone that overlooks downtown Manhattan. You could see the World Trade Center every time you look out the window of this place. So she's brought there by the real estate agent played by Ava Gardner. She's showing her around. She tells her that her neighbor upstairs, because they see a figure in the upstairs window who is a priest who doesn't bother anybody. He's blind and deaf. And was he deaf or is he just blind?
She says he's blind.
But don't worry about him. He'll never make any noise.
Yeah, okay.
And he never gets up from that chair either, because whenever you look up,
and I love the fact she's like, what's he looking at?
Yeah.
He's looking out the window and he's blind. She's like, what's he looking at?
So she moves in and she starts to meet other neighbors. Let's also mention that this movie is filled with old school Hollywood stars, almost royalty. One of the neighbors that she meets is played by Burgess Meredith, Charles Chazen, who has a cat and a bird on his shoulder. So he carries them around simultaneously. He's a very charming old man who welcomes her to the building, says that he recognizes her from television, which is odd, thinking of what happens a little bit later on.
But everyone recognizes her. She's a commercial actress.
Actually, this is the only line that I like in the movie is that
the only line.
He says, have I seen you on TV? And she says, I've been in several commercials. And he says, oh, I thought you were an actress, in such a dismissive way.
Dismissive. It's like, oh, yeah, sorry. I thought you were somebody. Yeah, and this apartment, there's no way a single woman needs 3 floors. And it's only $500. That's crazy. I was like, wow.
No, it's 400 because
400. They dropped the
price, and everybody on the commentary was saying how ridiculous that was, how much that apartment would be.
Yes, correct. Even then,
now,
right? And it was $50 deposit. I'm like, woo! I'd be jumping all over that. Those are one of those too good to be true moments because you realize that, yeah.
She starts to meet other neighbors as well. There's a couple of women, one of which is Beverly D'Angelo.
Holy crap! This is just out of control. This is where you're like, what am I watching here?
I just want to say, like, as sort of a life tip, if someone starts masturbating in front of you, you don't have to stay.
You don't have to stay.
You don't have to be polite because that person.
Are you done? Can I go now?
They've thrown civility out.
Oh my God! And she's such a sweetheart in those vacation movies, but holy crap! And she was. What the hell was going on there? Skanky women next door.
It was very reminiscent to me, and I doubt that there's a connection of the neighbors in Coraline, especially the nightmarish scenes a little bit later on in Coraline, the 2 ex-actresses. But these aren't actresses. Turns out that they're murderesses, which is revealed a little bit later on. Right. So the plot goes on. We see a little bit of Allison's life. There's photo shoots with Jeff Goldblum as the photographer.
Jeff Goldblum. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Now, apparently, he had starred in the director Michael Winter's previous film, Death Wish. He was one of the thugs in Death Wish. We see Jeffrey Orbach as Jerry Orbach, as a kind of like an overseer of one of these fashion shoots. He was like a director, at one point. Yeah, so he's got a throwaway scene as well. I think what the studio was looking for, because apparently the studio cast all these huge name actors in these small roles. Exactly. They were looking for like an airport thing where they could possibly put little squares of the pictures of the people on the poster.
Correct. You're right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the most obvious comparison is Rosemary's Baby, where there's a lot of big name actors in
that just kind of come and go.
Rosemary's Baby that have like relatively small roles, and even the plot seems at first like it's trying to ape Rosemary's Baby, but I use the term plot loosely because there's a lot of meandering in this. Literally 40 minutes into the movie, my husband turned to me and said, have you recognized any coherent plot yet? And I said, no. Because there's a lot of like strands where you're just going, why is this happening now? Like, why is there a police procedural subplot suddenly in the middle of this movie? I think the biggest crime this movie commits is that it doesn't like put its foot down on the gas and keep the tension going. The only really scary scene is the scene when her father appears in the apartment. And like from a storytelling point of view, she shouldn't have an out. Like she shouldn't be able to go back to her boyfriend and have him take care of her and get away from the house. Like she needs to be in the house and be stuck there so that like the tension can sort of like stay on that acceleration point, so that when you get to the end and she's like slightly hysterical, you have taken that journey with her. Instead, like it takes its foot off the gas after that point, and then it starts meandering around again. And then there's this whole thing where like Chris Sarandon's character is actually doing all the work that the main character should be doing.
He's the linchpin in all of this. Like he lets you know what's going on, and he's actively working on trying to find out what's going on.
Right.
Like she should be the one as the main character who's like uncovering things and finding things and, you know, getting all this stuff figured out, because it's hard not to compare it to Rosemary's Baby. But like in Rosemary's Baby, you're with Rosemary for the whole movie. By the end of the movie, you've taken this whole emotional journey with her. You don't have that here because like Allison actually spends a fair amount of time passed out. The information comes at such weird times in this movie. I got very frustrated watching this because I was like, where is he going with this? Like, why am I watching another modeling shoot? You know what I mean?
So she can pass out.
Once she realizes that this party that she attended and the neighbors that she has met don't exist. Ava Gardner brings her back and shows her the vacated apartments.
Right.
I think at that point you leave.
You move out, right?
That's
like the Eddie Murphy skit.
Right.
Out. Well, time to go.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. She basically does move out for all intents and purposes.
It goes back to young Howard.
No, the next scene she's sleeping and then she sees her father.
Right. But then after that, like she's in the hospital and then she's in Michael's apartment. But from a storytelling point of view, she should not have been able to go back to Michael's apartment. Like they should not still be on good terms. Like if I wrote this, she would have moved out because she realized something creepy about him. She would not want to go back to him, so she would not have that out. You know, her mother's far away in Baltimore and she's not in a position to like live anywhere else, so she has to stay in the house. The thing is from the stories, from a storytelling point of view, the house is clearly making her crazy, but she shouldn't be able to find relief from that. She should have to stay in the building. Basically, from the time she goes to the hospital until the end of the movie, she doesn't sleep in the house again. You know, she's not there alone. They go back a couple of times. She goes back a couple of times with Michael to investigate, but he's leading the investigation. He's doing all these different things. And at the end of the movie, it's like she's weirdly drawn back. But like from a storytelling point of view, like I said, it's like the director took his foot off the gas and then started like meandering around in these other directions.
But that flashback where she sees her dad having a menage a trois, and it's like this is just weird.
I heard some strange things about the making of this with the director, particularly that the actress who plays Allison, Christina Rains, she said this was the worst experience she's ever had working on anything, a movie, TV show, what have you, because of the director. I guess he was, according to her, was abusive. She wouldn't go into detail, but this is interesting because I didn't think this existed even in the 70s. But she was apparently a universal contract player, where you hear about that a lot in the 50s and 60s.
Right, yeah.
Like Clint Eastwood is a big example. He would show up in various Universal films because he was a contract player. He was contracted to appear in movies if they needed an extra or character actors or what have you. And she had the same deal. So this movie was presented to her not as a choice, but as something that she now needed
obligated to.
And she said that she loved working with all the actors. She had no issue with that. But the director, there was some issue with this director. And that was kind of repeated through some of the interviews that I read. So she was under duress during most of this
think it shows.
film, and it comes through. It does.
I think it shows.
Through.
Like there was a point where I'm like, Allison's losing her mind, and so am I.
As a matter of fact, she said that she has never watched the movie until she was doing this commentary.
Oh wow.
Because she has had such bad memories
PTSD.
of
Yeah.
it.
I actually put in my notes that she was like a Kate Jackson wannabe, and then I realized I found out that Kate Jackson was actually originally they were looking for her,
and she didn't know this. They because there's an interview with her during the commentary. She said she laughed. She said, "I wish Kate Jackson got this."
Well, we can't get that girl, so we'll just get someone who looks just like her. We need to talk about Christopher Walken, the biggest tie between these two movies.
and he speaks,
has no dialogue in this one either.
There's one line of dialogue that he has towards the end. She went to a party with 8 dead murderers. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, bam, he's fully realized Christopher Walken on screen for just a second, and then he's ripped away from you again.
Oh man!
But this is the thing where like strands of plot that seem to go nowhere. Like Michael hires this detective to come and investigate the things in the house. She has this vision of her father. The detective later shows up with the same wounds on his body. So clearly, like, she killed the detective.
Yes, although there's no thread there because
that's what I'm saying.
Because let's talk about the father, because this is the key sequence. And I remember watching years ago, maybe 5 years ago, Bravo had a show like top 50 scariest scenes in horror movies, and that scene from the Sentinel was one, I don't know where it fell, but it was one of them where
she's attacked
in her
by her
nightgown
dad.
And she's like goes upstairs, and then the father is there behind a door. And
that's a pretty harrowing scene.
It is. And then there's the scene where, and it is very disturbing, where she is attacking him with a knife, and makeup artist Dick Smith, has a field day. Yeah. And this guy that you're not sure really who he is looking at the apartment. It took me the three commentaries to realize who that guy was and how he tied into the dialogue from earlier, and that they think that she killed him because he has the same wounds on his face when the body is found, but there's no blood, there's nothing that ties to that.
Right, and then it doesn't go anywhere. Like this one police officer clearly sniffing around, but not because he thinks that she killed the detective, but because he thinks that her boyfriend killed his wife from 3 years ago. So
which is true, actually. It turns out to be true.
Right.
You know what's funny is that we're talking about this stuff, and we've totally gone off what is supposed to be the main plot, which is exactly what the
movie does. Yeah.
And
I was tickled pink to see William Hickey, though, the evil scientist from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes. I think it's him from Prizzi's Honor.
Well, he's also in One Crazy Summer and in Christmas Vacation.
Well, I mean, this whole movie is like, oh, I recognize this person.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Oh, I recognize that person.
Yeah.
Just throughout. Like, there's this whole thing about, like, Michael has this Latin translation, and he goes and gets it translated, and you have a nice little cameo by Martin Balsam, and then it's like, okay, well, now we have this Latin. What are we doing with this?
Nothing. Just
like,
she can read it.
Every time the creepy, or supernatural elements start to accelerate, it's like the director takes his foot off the gas and goes somewhere else. And then all of a sudden, the last 10 minutes are Crazy Town.
Yeah.
That's
released
actually
deformed.
Now let's talk about this, because what we haven't really touched upon is that this brownstone is sitting on or is adjacent to the gates to hell. It doesn't really, they don't tell you where it is or how it works, but there's a sentinel that is stationed by the church, by the Catholic Church.
And that's the priest in the window that we meet at the beginning of the movie.
Now, these priests, and this is Chris Sarandon who has to figure this out, because he's researching into who this guy is on the top floor. If he is the only phisical neighbor here, and Allison thinks that all these other people are there, he wants to find out more info. So he breaks in. He goes with
William Hickey.
Yeah. They break into the safe in the office, and he figures out that all these people over the course of centuries have taken on different personas. So you've got all these people that have suicide in their pasts, who suddenly cease to exist as one person, then become a priest or a nun, and you find out later have been set up as a sentinel. Now, I'm not sure if this is all over the world or just in New York, or this is the only gate that they
How
guard.
about we actually just level the building, put a big concrete slab there, and be done with
Because
it.
apparently, when you get up to use the facilities or something, that's when they can get up. You have to sit in that chair physically, or you can't get up. Because that's the thing is, I was thinking, you know, she's seeing these. She's meeting Mr. Chazen. She's meeting the neighbors. You know, should they be walking around if the priest is up there? Or is this when he leaves his seat and then they can get up, and then when he sits down again, they've got to go away again?
And that's never explained. Yes.
So that's the setup, is that this building is sitting on the gate, and that the sentinel is sitting on the top floor, kind of guarding things to make sure that these denizens don't get out and invade the earth. And at the end, as you said, Chris Sarandon finds out what's going on. He tries to strangle John Carradine, who is the sentinel. I'll kill you. It's like almost like Homer Simpson choking Bart during that scene. And then the other priest comes up behind Chris Sarandon and kills him.
Knocks him.
Kills him.
Yeah.
So then Chris Sarandon comes unscathed and tells Allison, who's a couple of floors below, what exactly is happening. And that Allison herself is slated to be the next Sentinel. They actually have it in the files, the date that she is going to become the next Sentinel. And that's when, as Christina said...
Sorry, that doesn't work for me. I have a hair appointment that day.
Yeah. The gates are unleashed because this fight is going on. And John Carradine is not available to be sitting in the chair for a few minutes. The gates open, and the denizens come out, and they are all coming towards Allison, because apparently if they get to her before the priest does, then she's not going to be the sentinel, and then they can run rampant.
Just run, yeah.
And they don't say this, but I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen.
I think they just hired a bunch of loonies and didn't know what to do with them.
Now, here's the thing. Now, this is the thing,
Carnival.
is that the people that you see are actually disfigured people.
Yes. Yeah.
This is horribly exploitative.
The moral question of doing this comes into play immediately. And now, everybody that was spoken to for this special edition Blu-ray said that they did not know what the director had in store, that it was completely his decision to cast actual disfigured people because, and this is insane, he didn't want to spend the money to put makeup on all these extras.
Let's hire real zombies.
But the cast say that when the disfigured actors came into the set, that they were the sweetest, loveliest people. And that Christina Rains, when she was doing this scene, felt guilty that she was acting afraid of them. I like questionable horror movies, right? Especially 70s
Yes.
questionable horror movies. And I swear I did not remember, maybe I blocked it from when I watched this the first time years ago. But when that final scene came up, first it is disturbing to watch.
Yes.
And like the music's going and everything else. And it just start to realize, okay, these are real people.
It's not like... It's not something like Freaks, like Todd Browning's Freaks.
Because they're being empowered, right?
Right. They're empowered. They have agency. They're treated as whole human beings, like despite the way they appear physically. Like here, he's taking advantage of something that they cannot control and treating them as monsters. And it's horrible. It's so hard and especially like what a callous reason to use somebody because he didn't want to pay for the makeup. It's appalling.
And the author of the book, obviously it wasn't written on the page that they would be disfigured people in this scene. It was just, the denizens of the netherworld. And that's, it was up to your imagination. So listening to the writer's commentary, he thought that the final scene derailed the movie. He said, I enjoyed it up until this point. Not so much because of the moral question, but because it becomes gonzo. Like, I think they were trying for some kind of a subtle scare tactic throughout. And then suddenly it completely changes gears and is in your face for that final 10 minutes. Christina Rains got to know some of the people that were in that scene. The writer got to know some of the people that were in that scene. They were overjoyed to be there and to be part of a movie. Apparently, a lot of them went back home as, big shots because they were in a big Hollywood movie. It's
what price? Oh well, that's bizarre. This whole thing is bizarre. It's just so off the rails.
but it is just it's disturbing, and it sets you off kilter watching it, even before the ending. You know, it's one of these disjointed things, yes, but there's enough creepy stuff going on that it's almost like a nightmarish kind of thing that doesn't make sense.
I mean, it's like you can almost see I've never read the book. I've never even heard of this until it was brought up for the show. But you can almost see the skeleton of what they're trying to achieve in the movie. It just, like, for me, it doesn't work. Like, unlike Aaron, I don't have like some childhood connection to this where I have a memory and, you know, like you have some like degree of nostalgia. Like, to me, it was just a super boring movie with a really weird ending, you know, because I hate things that go nowhere.
Hearing these stories about the director also kind of casts
that's
heavy
too bad,
shadow
right?
over this. Yeah.
Did he ever do anything after this?
He's got a long list of films he's directed. Nothing. I think Death Wish was the one that was the one that stuck out that I recognized. He directed all 3 Death Wish movies. I also want to point out that the music is just overpowering. It's really loud. And it's weird because Aaron pointed this out, that it's almost like TV movie music.
Yes.
You know?
Actually,
a lot of this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of feels like a TV movie. Even the way he shoots it, he does way too many like zoom close-ups.
Yeah, which work well on television, right?
Yeah, which is like feels like such a TV thing. Like, why is it zooming? And I felt like the music was always trying to tell me to be scared, and I was like, but there's nothing to be scared of.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You kept waiting for like the commercial breaks. This reminded me. I mean, I'm not as informed in these old 70s horror movies, but it did remind me a lot of Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Like it could have been a TV movie.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of the music, I thought I read somewhere that John Williams was actually set to score this. No, he was working on something bigger called Star Wars.
And Don Siegel was almost the director. It would have been a completely different film, I think, in somebody else's hands. The studio apparently, or not the studio, but the author of the book wanted Martin Sheen in the Chris Sarandon part. So he said he can't watch this without thinking about what Martin Sheen
what could have been.
Nobody wanted to listen to him because at the time Martin Sheen was a TV actor. Although the author had seen footage from Apocalypse Now. They were already filming parts of Apocalypse Now. And he knew how good Martin Sheen was in that, and that's why he wanted him in this, but nobody wanted to hear it. So
did you see there is a Richard Dreyfus uncredited cameo at the beginning of this movie?
Yes, although I can't catch him.
I didn't see him either. I did not go back and try and find him.
Well, it was funny at the end of the movie when the couple gets out of the car and you just see them from the side. You see the man from the side for a second getting out of the car, and I was like, who is that? Looks like James Franco. And then when they went up into the apartment, I saw you see the face full on. I was like, oh, it's Tom Berenger. But that's like another one of those things. Like, how did so many people end up in this? Like, who would become stars end up in this movie?
Yeah, and I think he's credited as man in apartment. Tom Berenger doesn't even have a name.
Last second.
They knocked down the brownstone and they put up a new building. Now they filmed in and out of a real brownstone in New York City. There were no sets. They filmed everything inside the actual brownstone that they were filming from the outside. They had to create the new building at the end using a matte painting. They couldn't really knock down the brownstone.
Right, correct. Yep.
So did they set Allison up in a Days Inn while they were doing that?
Yeah, because she was in the apartment the whole time.
She was in the new one at the end.
All right, I'll just wait down the street. She was at the Y. Oh, I see Tom Berenger's wife in that was Nana Visitor, who she was from Deep Space Nine. She was Kira. Wow, that was a movie.
I think I'm going to give it more buckets than both of you. I'll start. Again, it's a 70s horror movie that brings you right back to that time period. And I loved when Ava Gardner's character is showing Allison the apartment to begin with, and you see that view of downtown New York. And I so wanted her to say, oh, look, and there's where King Kong climbed up last year. And
eventually.
So I love movies like this set in the 70s and have that weird 70s music, and rules didn't seem to apply then like they do now. I would give it 3. I would probably give it more if not for the ending, because this is usually a movie like this is right in my sweet spot in terms of horror.
I'm going to go extremely low. And yeah, I appreciate that there are always going to be like movies that are sort of less quality, but like I think of the 70s as a time of great horror, like really good quality horror. So like I don't see the era as an excuse, because it's, you know,
Oh, it's not
Halloween-
an excuse.
Yeah,
I like,
'cause,
you know,
like,
I
yeah.
like stuff like this myself. I'm not, you know, trying to say that, oh, you know, that's I'm really weird in this way. But yeah, it has great horror, it has bad horror, just like any other era.
Yeah. And so I like the absolute incoherent mess of the plot offended me, and then the use of people with deformities as monsters at the end offended me. So I'm going to say 1, because it was a movie and I did like seeing Ava Gardner. And also the consensus was in my household that Burgess Meredith was too good for this movie, because he seemed like he was actually giving like
a decent performance.
a full performance.
Although I love the fact when he went into, he was lauding her decorative skills in the apartment, and I'm like, but it came fully furnished. She didn't do any of this, dude.
You're right. Now that's, I've mentioned this before. Does he have access to a TV since he recognized her from
Apparently.
the commercial?
As long as someone's paying that cable bill, who knows? I have to go somewhere in between. This was not good at all. And this, out of all these stupid horror movies that you guys are subjecting me to, this was by far the worst. This was the 70s nudity and the chopping off of noses was just it was much. I'll give it 2. So I went above Christina but below Jim. So I'm right in between. This is a movie I will never need to watch again. I don't know. It was bizarre for sure.
It was released in February of 77. So just
Horror month.
Months before Star Wars came out. 2 months after.
That's why John Williams was busy.
2 months after King Kong came out. So maybe they were filming in New York at the same time. Who knows?
Maybe he was climbing up there. You just didn't see him.
Maybe he was.
Yeah.
Made $4 million at the box office that year. I have no idea how much it cost to make. No idea.
All those stars, who knows?
Yeah.
Bring them on set for a day.
And I have to say that everybody that was speaking about this movie were on set were completely starstruck over Ava Gardner. Said she could do no wrong. That they all loved working with Ava Gardner.
Very cool. Now, as her character, was she set up to, like, she obviously knew that no one lived there.
You know, when you're watching this, you're thinking that she is in some way involved.
Yeah.
Because she is very sinister, especially when she's very nonplussed and like, well, nobody lives there. You know, but she's sinister at the same time. She's thinking, okay, she's a bad guy. She's got to be involved.
It doesn't make any sense. And after 1 month, she's not getting rent anymore. These people are either going to move out or turn into the new Sentinel.
And she wants her in there very badly because
apparently she knew that this lady was set up to be the next Sentinel. But that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. She wasn't profiting. Maybe she was just an evil real estate lady, as they all are.
That's a movie in itself. Evil real estate lady.
Evil real estate lady.
She just delivers people to like haunted houses.
Like,
it's a niche market, man.
Yeah, did she have a name just like Berenger had Man in Apartment, evil real estate lady in the credits?
Hold on, let's see. I have the IMDb up. No, Miss Logan.
That's right, Miss Logan.
Yeah.
But, you know, and this is, I thought this was interesting, and Christina, you may find this interesting as well. The book, The Sentinel, was published first in hardcover in 74, maybe 73. It was a flop upon release. Nobody bought it.
So let's make a movie out of it.
But then I think Simon & Schuster was the publisher. It was re-released in paperback, and the author was saying this was very odd for a publisher to do. It may have been the first time that they made a TV commercial for the book. And suddenly it became a smash hit, the book. And that's when the movie got rolling, because the book sold so well due to that TV commercial.
Like a book like that, I can definitely see, especially in the time, like that's the kind of thing that would be more popular in paperback, because the paperbacks, especially then, were significantly cheaper
Right.
than hardcover.
Hardcover.
So, because you could get a paperback for like 95 cents. Like if you have older copies of books and you see the prices on them, like paperbacks were super, super cheap. So I think people are much more likely to try something that might be out of their comfort zone when a book like that is in paperback. But also remember that like the film of the Exorcist, the film came out in 73 and The Omen came out in 76.
Yeah.
So like when the paperback would have come out would have been like in that sweet spot when people were sort of interested in this kind of horror. So, and obviously the book and the film of Rosemary's Baby had been a huge success a few years before, and the book, The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty's book, had been hugely successful too. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a market there for this kind of thing.
And I remember any of those books did not interest me in any way, shape, or form, but I do remember that whenever they were turned into a movie, they would always release the paperback with like photos in the middle. And I was always drawn to that, regardless if I wanted to see the movie or not. I was always looking at the pictures. So
I
turned me off
have
even more.
a used copy of The Exorcist that I got when I was young. And I remember that book scared me to death. Like, I was about 13 when I read it. And it is so, so scary, the book of The Exorcist. And the film, see, this is like where you try not to do this, but like a film like The Sentinel, you start comparing it to something like The Exorcist. Like almost immediately we were like, who is this priest, like, who's kind of a jerk? And then I was like, he's no Max von Sydow, who's such a compassionate character in The Exorcist, Yeah, it's so hard not to because this is such a niche type of horror. It's super hard not to compare all the entries, in this kind of thing, especially if they come out close to each other, like Rosemary's Baby, right? 68, right. And then like The Exorcist 73 and The Omen 76.
The Omen 76.
77.
But yeah, now you
Right
understand.
in there.
That's exactly what I did with #alive, because it's
but I was trying not to. It was more afterwards where I was like, I would feel better if I would just watch The Exorcist now.
I wouldn't.
And talking about 70s paperbacks, Erin had given me some insight as to her memories of the book itself. It had one of those classic where there was a hole in the cover and you just see a little bit of the picture underneath, and when you open it up, there's like a whole collage. So it was like one person or one face with the whited out eyes, not from the movie, but they probably took that visual from the cover of the book. And when you open it up, it's like all the denizens, and they all look like kind of like the Sentinel does, with the whited out eyes and the white faces.
Uh-oh.
And I think that would have been more effective than using the actual. If they bit the bullet, did the makeup, I think it would have been more effective than what they did.
Impactful.
Do you remember that? Have I triggered a memory?
I think so. Yeah. I think somebody just had a flashback.
Yeah.
Pretty gassed.
Well, there's
don't pass out, we'll make a drink.
There's a book that came out a few years ago, and I know I've mentioned it before to you guys, called Paperbacks from Howl. And it was Grady Hendrix wrote it, and it's a collection of these horror books from the 70s and the 80s, and he collects like all these sort of classic covers. So now I'm wondering if I actually saw it in Paperbacks from Hell. It makes me want to run over and grab a copy of the book and look and see.
It probably is in there, because apparently it was a very well-known book in the mid 70s.
So
the one with the priest? I see it. I found it. Ooh.
But I love those covers. I always think of them as the John Saul covers, because John Saul had a lot of covers like that.
Crazy.
Okay, are we done?
Yeah,
we are done. We need to leave this brownstone.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go into the confessional.
Confessionals.
And hopefully we don't have a blind priest on the other side of the partition.
Oh my.
So this question comes from Christina this week, and it is musically themed.
Yeah, I just thought it would be fun because I actually make a playlist for every season, every year. sometimes it's a playlist that I run to, or sometimes a playlist that I write to, but like I make one like that's sort of season specific. And so because of that, I was thinking of what 3 songs remind you the most of autumn/Halloween. I actually, because I make a playlist like this every year, I had a lot of trouble narrowing mine down to 3.
I had trouble coming up with 3. So.
I could give you some of mine.
Okay, maybe at least one crosses over.
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind immediately, this might be on your guys' list too, would be Season of the Witch by Donovan. Like that's automatic. Like
that almost made my list.
Yeah, this is now the fall. It's time. You know, Season of the Witch. The second one on my list is Dead Man's Party by
Oingo
Boingo. I love this song. It feels very Halloween-y to me. A few years ago, I saw somebody had made like a little video mashup of this with the Rankin Bass special, Mad Monster Party, and it was like
a movie or was that a special?
It's a movie. It's like an hour and a half long, I think. The Mad Monster Party.
I don't think I've ever seen it. Have you?
I own it.
You own it? Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird and meandering. It should have been a special. It should have been like a half an hour long. But the mashup, the video mashup of that song with like clips from that movie, it's perfect. Like perfect combination.
And it's funny that you say that song because I often listen. I've got the Sirius XM radio, satellite radio in my car. And one of the stations we always listen to is First Wave, which is late 70s, early 80s new wave. And they just played that the other day. I just heard it.
And my number one song that makes me think of autumn/Halloween is Blackwings by Tom Waits. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you guys, but like this song was actually the inspiration for my first series that I wrote.
Ooh, yeah.
The Blackwing Series. What record is that from? What Tom Waits record is that from?
It's from Bone Machine.
Bone Machine.
And it's so funny because I asked my son this question. I said, what songs remind you of autumn/Halloween? And the first song he said was Blackwings. So we're like very much in sync on that. But it's a song about the Grim Reaper. If you've never heard it, it's fantastic. And that was sort of my starting point when I was writing that series. When I first came up with the idea of an agent of death, I was thinking of Tom Waits. Also, because I had trouble narrowing this down, I need to give an honorable mention to Howl by Florence and the Machine, which is one of my favorite songs and reminds me of autumn because there's actually a quote from the Wolfman in the song.
The Lon Chaney Wolfman?
Yeah. So in the movie, you know, they say even a man who's pure of heart and says his prayers by night may still become a wolf when the wolf's bane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. So she has that quote in the song, but she takes out the part about the wolf's bane. But yeah, so every time I hear it, I have a little smile on my face because that's my favorite Universal horror film. I'm all done.
Admirable.
All right. I feel that Jim's probably going to nail this. I'll go next because, again, I had to struggle. I don't know. I guess I don't really compare. There's one in particular, but All the Leaves Are Brown, Mamas and the Papas. Very much so. Autumn song for me. Obviously, you can't do Halloween without the Time Warp.
Yeah.
Horror Picture Show. That's almost
Nice
a
one.
given. Almost
Nice
a given.
one.
But this one's a little more personal, which is every year for quite some time, the missus and I would go and see a play on Broadway. And we'd always go, usually in the fall. That's my favorite time of year down in the city. And anytime I'm anywhere near Times Square, I can't help but break into George Benson's On Broadway. So that really connects me to the fall because I love the song and I just tend to sing it when I'm in the city. Although it's been a while since we've been in there, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Similar to Christina, I've got songs that are tied to a specific season, and I cannot listen to them if it's not that season. You can't listen to a fall song in the summer. Got to turn that off if it comes on the radio. I cannot listen to that right now. Same thing with a summer song in the fall. Doesn't work. In my case, I don't really make playlists so much. I will sit and listen to a whole album. Though these aren't so much songs as they are 3 records that I think need to be listened by me in the fall. So first one I'm going to say is one of the Brit pop bands of the early 90s, Ride. They have a CD. They have a record called Carnival of Light. And it is very acoustic. And, you know, it's as simple as it came out in the fall. That's when I was listening to it heavily. And it's one of my favorite albums, period, you know, in my rotation right now. So again, Ride, Carnival of Light is one of them. There's a song specifically called 2,000 Miles, which is probably the most indicative of autumn for me. Secondly, another Britpop band, Suede. I love Suede. And they have a record called Dogman Star. Again, came out in the fall, came out in October of 94. So I was in that mindset already, and I fell in love with this record. So it is in probably my top 3 albums of all time. And I cannot listen to it any other time of year but October/November. Even November gets a little bit too late in the year. It's usually an October
Wow, it's got an
thing.
expiration date?
It does. It
Nice.
does. And then lastly, I've made no bones about it. I love David Bowie. He is my favorite artist of all time. And his 74 album, Diamond Dogs, the character that he plays, he went from Ziggy Stardust to Aladdin Sane to Halloween Jack was the name of the character for Diamond Dogs. That is my number 1 go-to Halloween album is Diamond Dogs by David Bowie.
See, I figured you'd pick David Bowie, but I was so sure you would pick Scary Monsters.
No. Scary Monsters is more, that's like a winter. I can't explain why.
How dare you? Fall. Wow.
Yeah, you
my.
think, you know, I have to ask myself, why do I listen to Scary Monsters in the winter?
It
But
just
no,
seems like it would be a fall album to me.
right, yeah. No, for some reason, Diamond Dogs is the one. That's my Halloween go-to with Bowie, his Diamond Dogs. That was that was fun to come up with something for that question.
Maybe we could do what we did with the last music stuff. Post something on our website, some links. Maybe not.
Can I talk about what we're doing next week yet? Are we at that point?
Oh boy,
Yes.
we are at that point. Yes,
We're finally here.
we're finally here. Yes,
Since episode 1 of this podcast, I have been chewing my fingernails,
sitting on this,
waiting, and I know Christina. I'm in safe territory with Christina. Jeff, you're still a question mark on this.
but it
so
doesn't
I'm
matter.
still-
It's a 5 bucket, so it
I'm
doesn't matter
hesitant,
what
yeah.
I think. It's still being inducted in the 5 bucket club, right? Isn't that the way that?
Yes, this is the agreement that we have.
Correct. So regardless of what my feelings will be for this when I watch it, will not tarnish.
So we are going to be covering as like the climax of our Halloween viewing.
Listen, at this point, we might as well keep going. Who knows? We got nothing new. We're scrambling, folks.
The rest of it will be codas after it until we get to
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. But we are covering the original 1978-79 classic of the zombie genre, directed by George A. Romero, Dawn of the Dead. And
I
I'm
gotta make
so
sure I
happy
got
to
the
be saying
78
that.
and
So
not the
happy.
remake, right?
Oh, Jeff, you
I got the
cannot
right
come.
one.
You
Listen,
cannot
I
come
see
to the
the
table.
poster.
You cannot
No.
come to the
I see the
table with
poster
that.
over your shoulder. I know which one I picked up.
Signed
it's
by
there.
Ken Foray, I may point out. I got that signature in the Monroeville Mall by Ken Foray
And I'm sure we're
himself.
going to hear all about the Monroe.
Oh, you will.
Mall.
You will.
Yes, J.C. Penney's, baby. All right. I can honestly say I've probably never. If I've seen this, I have forgotten all about it. So it will be like all new for me.
Good. I cannot wait to talk about it. Cannot
Okay.
wait.
Let's
Next
not
week, Dawn of the
forget,
Dead.
we also have Mandalorian coming up,
Yes.
and we will be running individual self-contained reviews for each episode. I believe that is the game plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Season 2. So it's big. This is a big culmination, man. Almost 3 years, Jim. You've had to wait.
I know. It makes me sad that I don't have it to look forward to now.
We can always hold off.
No. I'm ready. I'm
No,
ready.
he wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's there. It's there for the taking. So
But
let's do it.
we have so much more Romero that we haven't even touched upon. So there's that to look forward to, at least.
All right, cool. All right.
All
I'm
right.
excited. And this was a fun episode, although I wasn't crazy about the Sentinel. And again, I wasn't alone, so for different reasons, but
Still fun to talk about this stuff, to talk it out, even if you don't like it.
oh, absolutely. So,
Sometimes, in some ways, it's more fun to talk about something you don't like.
yeah.
Yeah,
No.
go back and listen to Condor Man as a prime example of just that. Maybe our best example of just that.
But once again, we survived
Mhm.
and we learned from it. All right, kids. As always, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your fall. Maybe take a couple of those musical suggestions, pop them on your playlist, and
And then thank us.
there you go. All right, cool. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
The victims have been decapitated.